How come you say you're Okinawan? Isn't it the same thing as Japanese? There are a lot of Okinawans who might not even realize the difference between Okinawans and Japanese. My name is Brandon Ng, and I actually grew up right in this area. This is Kāneʻohe. So Okinawa is now a part of the country of Japan, but it's a tiny island, and it used to be the center of the Ryukyu Kingdom. So it's an independent nation. It has its own history, its own culture, its own language. But now, simply because it was, basically swallowed up by the country of Japan, people assume that Okinawans are Japanese. Yeah, the truth is Okinawan is a separate thing. It's a separate culture. I really want to help preserve that. I don't want to forget about the past. Throughout history, again, there's been pretty aggressive efforts to assimilate Okinawans to Japanese, especially after Okinawa was annexed in 1879. Maybe about 20 years later, so in the early 1900s, that's when the first Okinawans started coming to Hawaii to work on the plantations. So in a sense, they were getting away from that oppression that they were experiencing from Japan when they were still in Okinawa. Fast forward to today, being in a place as diverse as Hawaii, it gives us, you could say, a safe space to talk about it, to explore our culture, our history, to be who we are, to be able to talk about it, to be able to look at history and say, hey, this happened. In some cases, yeah, that wasn't right that happened.
There's an Okinawan proverb that says, Marijima no kutuba washi ne kunin washiun. And this basically means if we forget the language of our homeland and ancestors, then we also forget the homeland itself and our ancestors themselves. So these words literally mean a person of Okinawa or a person of the land, again, directly connecting ourselves to our ancestors and to the lands that they came from.
When I first encountered this term and even idea of aloha ʻāina, I thought of it as kind of this reaction to oppression, to social injustices, and that actually resonated with me a lot. When I lived in Okinawa, I had been involved with groups who would show up at places to kind of, raise our fists and stuff. I think I bought a blank t-shirt in Okinawa and I Sharpied like aloha ʻāina on it. Over the years, I had come to realize that it's not only about protesting, and it's definitely much more about revering and loving, respecting the land that you're from, the place that you call home, or even the land of your ancestors. Included in that would be, standing up to protect it when you feel necessary. A lot of the stories are very, very similar. The experiences are very similar to what Native Hawaiians had gone through. For example, the Native Hawaiian language and how it was revitalized over the years. That's a really strong inspiration, I think, for a lot of Okinawan people who do see the importance of holding on to and preserving their native language. If we have our language, then we can show people that we exist. We have our own identity. We have our own culture. Being the English teacher in an public elementary school, why don't I figure out a way to bring Okinawan language into the English class time? And then I came up with this idea. What if we had a song, put some basic Okinawan words in there, but explains what they mean in the English language? That way, that's the way to get it into the English class time. An Okinawan friend from Brazil that I had met on my study program, and he actually made an animation for it. And that became the thing that I played every day for the kids in English class. Thanks to the internet, put it on YouTube, and Okinawans, well, not only Okinawans, but people around the world are able to see it and learn a couple of Okinawan words. And I guess the main idea was just to raise awareness about it too. Just let these kids know, hey, your language wasn't Japanese before. It's a different language, and it's a cool thing. But again, by having something like a tool like music, it really helps open people up to it. Music is a big part of what I do. I would hope that the music can help people connect. The song is called Mirantin. So Mirantin would basically mean, even if you can't see it. The song was inspired by the indigenous Ryukyuan tradition called Hajichi. which is a tradition of tattooing the back of the hands. And this was done primarily for females. It's kind of a mysterious thing. There's a lot of different stories on the reasons that they had these tattoos. So a lot of the first generation immigrants, the women, they had these tattoos. A lot of families, they probably still have pictures of this first generation that came. Most times the women, they're hiding their hands. This was a time when they were led to be ashamed of their own culture and identity. So the song talks a little bit about that. It's almost like I'm speaking to my great-grandmother, trying to have a conversation, asking her, what is it for? But it also, kind of the main idea is to tell her that it's not something to be ashamed of. And, actually, it's something that we take great pride in. There's a lot of renewed interest in that tradition itself. That was the idea when I wrote it, but then, when you really think about it, it's talking about the culture as a whole, our identity. It's not something to be ashamed of. Yeah, we should kind of stand up and let people know who we are. I'd hope that people take away that Okinawans have their own culture, their own language, history that was separate from Japan. If you hear someone say they're Okinawan, your friend tells you they're Okinawan, believe them. Don't argue with them. Don't say, oh, why are you saying Okinawan? What's the difference,